Hey everyone, so I got two new banknotes in the mail. They're the most recent ones I've ordered, so they came early. Let me show them. So here are the two new banknotes on the bottom two. Here, they're from Angola. Angolan Kwanzas is what the name of the current currency is. And at the top there was the only other Angolan banknote I had before these got here. It's Portuguese colonial banknote from 1926, 2.5 Angolares, and that was a currency they used in the early part of the Portuguese colonial era. I think they may have changed it later on. This one's from 1926, and these two are from 2012. So the banknote from 1926, even though it's not the focus of this video, actually kind of an interesting story to it, because a lot of the banknotes I used to get were from a flea market near where the house my parents live in is at. And there used to be a few places that sell currency. There's only one now, and the one now, the one that's still open, has a $1 bin I like to look through. Usually the items are pretty repetitive, but sometimes I'll find like surprise stuff in there, that's pretty neat. And that was one of them. And for the longest time I thought, oh, neat, little niche find. Then I actually start looking online and researching it. Turns out the cheapest these things go for is like $150, $250, and I got it for $1. So, see all these expensive prices online, but you gotta look around because sometimes you find stuff for way cheaper. Here's a close-up view of all three banknotes. So we got the one from 1926, 2.5 Angolares, and we got 5 Kwanzaa from 2012, and 10 Kwanzaa from 2012. Here are the backs of the banknotes. So just like before, we got the old one on top and the two new ones on the bottom. I really like the designs on these new ones. For a closer look here, show the backs. So usually I'm more a fan of the older designs from the early 20th century because those have a lot of neat detail to them. But here, I actually like the newer ones better. So you can see here we got the 10 Kwanzas, the 5 Kwanzas, and 2.5 Angolares. And you can see here a lot of detail, but it's almost exclusively this one purple color. I feel like that's kind of bland. And I feel like there's a kind of an over-reliance here on these sort of flower-ish designs like you can see on either side. And it looks very visually repetitive. If we go here, if we look at the 5 Kwanzas, we see we've got this really neat waterfall scene going on. A lot of this is blue color, but I think it really works. It's got this really nice minimalist kind of aspect to it with the other parts of the design. Over here we can see this traditional thing going on. We got the little country seal. And I think it works really nice because it integrates nicely with the traditional design and the image of the waterfall. We go down again to the 10, same thing. We got a lot of this red color, but we also have this another waterfall scene. And I think the two colors, they really blend together very well. It's not very detailed, I call this a sort of a minimalist design scheme, if that's even the proper word. But I really like the way it works together. It looks very balanced. Just looking back at the older one again. Neat rhino in the middle, but it's all this one purple color. And I feel like these newer ones do a lot better job with color and imagery. Just to further the point, I'll do a front comparison. So once again, starting from the top, 1926. This one I think looks like there's a little bit of a green to it, but it's almost entirely this one purple tone. And you can definitely tell it's from the 20s by the design, but there's not really much special about it. I mean, we got the portrait off to the side and we got little trees and stuff. But a lot of the banknotes back then looked like that. It's not like the Algerian franc banknotes from one of my earlier videos where they got a lot of color to it, shows the landscapes and stuff. Here, it's a lot more simpler. It's not bad, but I feel like the newer ones, let's go down, even though they have much less visual element, I think it visually works a lot better. There's more color, not a lot more, but just in the right spots. And it looks very balanced. It integrates the traditional Angolan designs. And we got these two guys in the middle. Their names I don't remember who they are. Pretty famous Angolans though, as you would probably guess. And yeah, I just really think I really like the design on here. It's not a lot of detail, but they put it in the right place and it works really together. I really like how they use a dominant color, but then they put in the other colors and it balances out really well. Unlike here, it's just purple, a little bit of green on the front. That's kind of it. Also, another thing, there is a lot of text on the front of this. But compare that to the newer banknotes. There's not a lot of text, and that's another like a really positive aspect because the text, as you can see, takes up a lot of space and it kind of crowds the design off to the edge. Here we have much little text, so we can have room for like traditional designs, sort of pattern stuff on the edge. This here, and I think it makes it work much nicer, in my opinion. See the same thing here. So originally, I actually didn't plan on getting these since I already had that one. I was gonna think about getting them in the future sometime since I only had one from the colonial period. I want to get a modern one too, independent period. But I found these, and the price was really good, so I decided, hey, let's do it. And it's actually kind of interesting. Angola, coincidentally, the one I ended up getting first, the one I didn't even click getting. We actually discussed Angola in my contemporary Africa class, talking about the Cold War and decolonization. And we talked a lot about how the Angolan Civil War went on from the 1970s into the late 1990s, and by some definition into the early 2000s, because it was a free-sided civil war, and there were a lot of groups taking part, some of whom were still active into the early 2000s. And even though the leader of the one group that really, to my knowledge, didn't have a lot of the like government control, I think he died in like the early 2000s or late 90s, I don't remember exactly. And his death is often marked as the end of the war, although that is debated. And how so Angola and the other Portuguese colonies in Africa, they didn't get independence until much later. So Portugal had this colonial concept of Luso-tropicalism. They saw the tropical colonies, mostly in Africa, apart from Timor and Goa, were seen as extensions of Portugal, very similar to how the French saw Algeria as sort of like an overseas extension of France, much like what French Guyana and Martinique are. And so a lot of the people in the colonies, of course, don't really agree with that. And Portugal had a fascist government at the time that had taken power in the 1930s. So they were really in a tight spot. However, that would all change in 1974. In Portugal, the Carnation Revolution overthrew the, oh, okay, maybe overthrew is a bit of a harsh word. They got rid of the fascists. I don't know how like militaristic it got, and as a result, Portugal, they're not fascist anymore because they got rid of the fascists. So they said, okay, Lusotropolism, no more Lusotropolism. They decided, okay, we're going to get with decolonization because Britain and France had already decolonized at this point. So they decolonized. And in the African colonies in, not the African colony, well, technically the African colony, but the Portuguese colonies in Africa, especially Mozambique and Angola, there had been militant groups fighting the Portuguese colonial governments, and they were very harshly oppressed. So that changed. And you would think that that would be a good start, right? Well, no, because Angola had the free opposing groups, and no one could really agree who should have taken charge in that situation. So Angola ends up being stuck in this civil war, free-sided civil war, with money pouring in from a bunch of foreign countries and landmines everywhere. And we're talking tens of thousands dead. A lot of the country is mined. I'm imagining they're probably demining it to make it safe again, but that would just make life impossible in some areas because you literally can't walk anywhere without stepping on a mine. You would get blown up, and your leg would probably end up losing legs or something like that. And yeah, it was just the Cold War was not a good time to be in Angola because Angola was having a massive civil war. We discussed it in the class, along with a lot of the other African events of that period. And I thought that was just an interesting coincidence that, of course, I ended up getting Angolan banknotes. So, yeah. Since Mozambique came up, I thought it would be appropriate to actually show these two Mozambican banknotes and this independent one as well from 1989. These two are Portuguese colonial banknotes, and they're interesting not just because of that, but also they're overprinted. Banco de Mozambique. And the reason why this happened is after Mozambique became independent, they had a bunch of the colonial banknotes circulating still. So what they did is they overprinted with them Banco de Mozambique, because what it says is Banco Nacional Tamarino, the National Overseas Bank of Portugal, of course, although it doesn't say that, that's very much implied. And since they were an independent country, they decided to overprint it with their bank name. And make sure the backs of these ones too. There's the backs. And we got the independent one down here too. Which actually, just like Angola, I like that design more. I think it works better, visually speaking. So yeah, those are my new banknotes. Thanks for watching. Make sure to hit that like button and leave a comment. Subscribe if you like my videos.